From the icy waters of Atlantic Canada to the lavish dining tables of Paris and Beijing, there's one name dominating global seafood right now: Canada. While American lobster boats are struggling under tariffs and trade wars, Canada has quietly built a lobster empire, ruling Europe and Asia one shipment at a time. This isn't just about seafood. It's a story of smart trade deals, diplomacy, and timing. And in 2025, the results are jaw-dropping.
The price is going down. The Chinese have made it aware that they're not willing to absorb the cost.
What if I told you that America's lobster industry, once the beating heart of Maine's coastal identity, is collapsing, while Canada enjoys billion-dollar success stories in Europe and Asia? On August 29, 2025, the numbers are brutal. Canadian lobsters now dominate 76% of China's live lobster trade compared to just 25% for the United States. In Europe, tariffs from the Comprehensive Economic and Trade Agreement, better known as CETA, ensure that Canadian lobster enters markets tariff-free, while American lobster from Maine remains subject to duties of up to 8%. That small difference in cost reshaped the industry. French restaurants in Paris and Madrid changed menus almost overnight, switching from Maine lobster to homered Canadian. German wholesalers explain that when orders stretch into thousands of pounds, the savings are decisive. The impact was immediate. Canadian exporters saw contracts signed at record levels, while U.S. shipments piled up unsold.
Fishmonger Tommy Gomes shows us the latest spiny lobster catch on his dock in Point Loma.
Spiny lobster season here in San Diego. It's game on right now.
Gomes, a former fisherman, owns Tunaville Market and Groceries in Driscoll Wharf. He says the season opened late September and runs through March, but there's trouble beneath the surface.
Very good season. They were off to a great start. And unfortunately, the bottom fell out of the basket and the price dropped.
Last year, spiny lobster sold for $20 to $24 per pound. This year, $7 to $10. That's a devastating drop for California's third most economically valuable fishery. San Diego's a major hub, and when you factor in recreational fishing worth up to $40 million annually statewide, the ripple effects hit hard.
The prices are lower this year because China was a big buyer of lobsters, and they're just not buying this year.
Canada's lobster exports hit an eye-watering $2.9 billion last year. It's the country's single biggest seafood export. It shipped to over 118 countries worldwide. From Paris to Tokyo, Canadian lobster isn't just food. It's status, it's luxury, it's strategy. Meanwhile, the US, once the global lobster king, is losing market share fast, caught in a web of trade wars, tariffs, and plummeting catches. So today, let's break down why Canada's lobster industry is booming, how the US got trapped, and what this shift means for the future of global trade.
Stephanie Nadeau exports lobsters. She is the owner of The Lobster Company in Maine. So Stephanie, thank you so much for being with me. So you've already been hit hard. I was reading, you told my producers that exports fell 60% over the last year during the peak winter season, and now you hear this news. How devastating is this for your lobster business?
Thank you for having me, Brooke. Well, we've been devastated for the past 10 months, and we've been waiting patiently for the trade war to slow up here a little bit so we could get back to work. So we were quite disappointed to hear that, trade talks had broken off.
Tell me, help us understand how this affects your business specifically.
It's basically thrown me into limbo, right? Because there was never a defined end to the trade war. There's no time limit that someone can give me. I can move my business to Canada and continue on like there is no trade war. I didn't personally think it would last this long, given the effect it's having on the agricultural sector particularly.
Knowing that you've been suffering for 10 months, seeing the news that the tariffs have now gone up, is there any way for you to mitigate these losses? Is there anything, Stephanie, that you could do?
Move to Canada and start selling lobsters from there.
But why would you want to do that?
I don't want to, and that's one of the reasons I haven't. And conversely, if I made a big, capital investment in Canada and moved my business, and by some capricious tweet, we suddenly end the trade war. It's all for naught. I can't make any plans. I've been waiting, to tell you the truth.
When you say capricious tweet, are you angry? Tell me how you're feeling, Stephanie.
Yes, no, I mean it's kind of like stages of death, right? Initially I was really, really angry, and now you're just trying to survive and keep your head above water. I mean, never in my lifetime did I expect that the President of the United States would pick winners and losers in a capitalist economy. That's what he's done. He picked me as one of the losers.
For example, many Maine blueberries are processed in Prince Edward Island. Maine also sends between $200 million and $400 million worth of lobster to Canada each year for processing. There are 240 lobster processing plants in Canada, but only 15 in the United States. I share the President's goal of getting more of that manufacturing done in the state of Maine, done in the United States. But the fact is that if we impose these tariffs on Canadian processing, it's going to be our Maine lobstermen who will bear the cost. It's going to be consumers who bear the cost. The price hikes that will happen for Maine families, every time they go to the grocery store, they fill their gas tank, they fill their heating oil tank.
Europe has fallen head over heels for Canadian lobster, and the reason is simple: CETA. That's the Canada-EU free trade deal that wiped out tariffs on fish and seafood. No extra fees, no headaches, no border drama. Results: in 2024 alone, Canada shipped over $200 million worth of lobster to the EU, growing at over 7% a year, even as US suppliers face fluctuating duties. French buyers call Canadian lobster le homard fiable, the reliable lobster, because shipments arrive fresh, fast, and on time. Reliability. That's the killer advantage. Canadian exporters save up to 8 to 12% per shipment in former tariff costs, giving them a price edge that is nearly impossible for US suppliers to match. That's not luck. That's strategy.
The tweets that the tariffs China has paid over the last year are, his words, partially responsible for our great economic results. What's your response to that for the president?
It's not great economic results if you specialize in exporting to China. And in the case of lobsters, the EU, we have a differential in the tax rate, again, with Canada. The Canada pays 0% and we pay 8%. So you're closing off the export markets for US lobsters. And it's a huge percentage of overall lobster sales, maybe as much as 50%.
As a businessman who buys a lot of lobster from Newfoundland, PEI, and New Brunswick, all of it through Whitecap Seafoods based in Newfoundland.
Both men say that for their business, lobster, crab, and shrimp are the most popular Canadian products. Why is Canadian seafood so popular? Reputation. Mr. Ding says Chinese consumers think seafood from Canada is from pure water and very clean, and also very delicious.
In Asia, lobster is no longer just dinner. It's prestige. And guess who owns that market? Yep, Canada. In 2024, Canada exported $472 million worth of lobster to China. And in just January of 2025, exports hit a staggering $73 million in 1 month. To put that into perspective, China now buys nearly 40% of Canada's live lobster exports. Meanwhile, the US, once China's main supplier, saw its lobster exports collapse during the trade war, dropping more than 80% when these tariffs kicked in. And it's not just China. In Japan, Canadian suppliers own over 90% of the frozen lobster market. In South Korea, the Canada-Korea FTA wiped out a 20% tariff, giving Canadian exporters a clean runway straight into high-end restaurants. Now, let's talk about the US, because this is where it gets rough. During Trump's trade war, China hit US lobster with up to 35% tariffs, and those haven't fully gone away. Maine's lobster exports to China crashed from nearly $180 million to under $90 million, while Canada stepped in. To make matters worse, Maine's overall catch has now fallen to its lowest level in 15 years, around £86 million in 2024. Meanwhile, Canadian landings surged early in 2024, up 18% in major zones before easing later due to global prices. So while the US wrestles with politics, tariffs, and even environmental strains, Canada is out here expanding market share and building alliances. When America picked trade fights, Canada picked trade partners, and that made all the difference.
60% of the live lobster here at Deep Cove Ocean Products goes to China, £2.5 million a year. Foreign tariffs are going to hit hard.
We're worried about the prices going down. The Chinese have made it aware that they're not willing to absorb the cost.
Shrinking profit margins for companies like Deep Cove, the busy spring lobster season just around the corner.
We have more supply coming into the market here soon, so we're going to have to get the prices down.
Although he adds it could have been worse. China has gone so far as to ban lobster from some countries before. This move, retaliation against Canada's tariffs on Chinese EVs, steel and aluminum.
Yes, China reimposed a 25% tariff on Canadian lobster early this year, bringing the total tariff burden close to 41%. Sounds bad, right? But here's the twist. Even with those tariffs, Canadian lobster shipments are still outperforming US exports by miles. Why? Because Canada has built an entire ecosystem of trust, from traceable supply chains to cold chain logistics. Buyers know exactly what they are getting. Globally, Canadian lobster prices are holding firm, rising up to 40% higher than last season in some regions. In short, Canada's lobster industry isn't surviving, it's thriving. It's not a fluke, it's a formula. Canada turned a local catch into a global empire built on smart diplomacy, free trade, and reliability. The US built walls, Canada built bridges. The US started a trade war, Canada started trade deals. And now the world's most luxurious lobster comes stamped with a maple leaf. The question is, if all tariffs disappeared tomorrow, would Europe and Asia go back to buying American lobster? Or would they stick with Canada, the new seafood superpower? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I will pin the best one. Until next time, stay sharp, stay curious, and maybe order a Canadian lobster dinner tonight. So YouTube thinks you will like this video over here. Thank you so much for watching. See you in the next one. Au revoir.